Hey there, you're currently listening to WKNC 88.1 FM HD1 Raleigh. We are North Carolina State University's student run radio station, and I'm the Martyroshka. This is Off the Record, our interview segment. If you're unaware of that, so stay tuned if that's something that's up your alley. Joining us today is an upcoming artist from North Carolina we've got in our rotation, Tanner York. If you feel comfortable, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Tanner?
Hello, my name is Tanner. I am a North Carolinian musician, and thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Yeah. I've been hearing your stuff as of late, and it's been really good stuff. It's been being passed around the WKNC circles, so I thought it would be a good idea to, you know, try to give you a spotlight, put you on the air, and get some insight into the way you operate, I guess.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for that introduction. Now that we've got that out of the way, I wanted to ask what parts of North Carolina do you consider home, given that you spent a lot of the time recording your latest album in a myriad of places? I feel like you'd be able to answer that question best yourself. So why don't you let the listeners know where you consider home?
Well, I grew up in Cary, so my entire life up until university was in Cary, and that's where like I learned to record, and it's, it's where I learned how to play instruments, and I played shows through like School of Rock program in Cary, and so that was like some of my first experience with playing music live. And then I saw a lot of shows when they would come to like Durham and Raleigh, and that was very formative. So Cary is definitely like where I'm from, but I definitely kind of came into my own way more once I got to Asheville, just because there's such a thriving DIY scene here, and you know, DIY shows have such a built-in crowd. So, uh, and there's so many wonderful creative people and good friends here that are also doing cool stuff that love to collaborate and stuff like that. So right now, Asheville definitely feels like home, but I'm definitely from like raised my entire life in Cary.
Anyway, Tanner, are there any Asheville artists that you would consider like collaborators or influences that you'd like to talk about right now?
Yeah, like for the first 2 years that I was in university, I was rooming with Everin Centeno, who has now moved to Chicago and is part of the three people that run the Trash Tape label, which put out my first record. And we spent so much time growing together with recording and finding each other's taste and introducing each other to stuff. And definitely, I see Everin as a huge influence on me. But like currently, uh, the two guys that are in my band are from my favorite Asheville band, which is Dish, and I kind of stolen them uh temporarily for however long they will stay with me. And also Jacob uh Prabilski, who plays second guitar in my band, is a huge collaborator with me, and those are the people I'd say like I'm most often collaborating with.
Yeah, that's really cool. Like I've heard a lot. Like obviously, as someone from Raleigh, I've only really heard about the Asheville DIY scene, but I've heard like really good things about it. So it's really interesting to see that it's like you'd consider your project, I guess, an amalgamation of the people you're around. Is that true?
For sure. Like I when I got to Asheville, I saw Dish pretty early on. I saw like a Dish show, and I was like, "Uh-oh, I really have to step it up." And it really lights a fire under you and makes you want to pour everything you have. Not necessarily like I wasn't too influenced by like genre or anything, because I was always like a pop guy. and not too many other people were doing that, but it was more the like attitude that I was definitely influenced by, and learning the ropes of a DIY scene and like everything like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so speaking of the pop you play, I think now would be a good time for us to interject a track from York's latest album, Welcome to the Shower, and that track is going to be Girlfriend. After we play this track, we're going to follow it up with some more questions about his music, so stay tuned.
I heard that you got a girlfriend, and I know she's crazy about you. In my world, she doesn't deserve you, but you have a girlfriend. She loves you just fine. I heard she gave you a tattoo of your dog that recently died. I heard you're naked without her. Unbeatable girlfriend. Oh, how I wish you were mine. Counting the days till she sends you on the road again. And I'll be there, pick you up and bring you Well, I heard there's something about her that keeps you from wanting to cry. But I could be everything she is when you have a girlfriend. I'm not on your mind.
Anyway, that was a great track. I really liked it. I really liked the stuff I've heard off of Welcome to the Shower, and what I wanted to hear from you is how would you clarify your music? Cuz I can tell there's like a lot of like power pop influence I feel on this record. Like some artists that I felt reminded of upon like listening were like I don't know, John Brion, Big Star, the Lemon Twigs, those are what came to mind. I was wondering how you would categorize it because that's just the way I see it personally. So feel free to like correct me or repudiate me because you know your music better, of course. Enlighten us.
Yeah, I'm a giant John Bryan fan. All those bands are real big influences on me. Definitely Beach Boys, Beatles. As far as like, um, I remember seeing the Elephant Six documentary that like detailed that whole scene, and that really inspired me. Like, I think I immediately bought like a Tascam Porta-Studio, and that's what a lot of the album was done on because it has such a specific sound and such a specific workflow that elicits a certain type of music, I feel like, in a certain mood that I was very captured by. So, a lot of a mix of like the biggest bands of all time, like the Beatles and Beach Boys, and like really little tape bands. and just trying to, because there's like a lot of crossover in the enjoyability of like the Beatles versus like Olivia Tremor Control or something like that. Like even though one is much more low production value.
No, no, definitely. I get that. Like pop, in my opinion, is a very diverse genre, and like it's really good when you can like consolidate that sound into like something really cool. Like you take these disparate influences and combine them into something like wholly unique. So something I wanted to like piggyback off of regarding your like creation process for Welcome to the Shower. Is there any particular like ethos you subscribe to while making the album? Like for example, certain aspects you wanted to like make the listener think of or emphasize, or maybe even like something you wanted to like, put under wraps maybe.
I was definitely going for like a mix of like trying to be funny with lyrics and sounds, like making choices that like would almost make you laugh or something like that. But also never uh, the goal being to never to remain funny without losing like sincerity or like without while maintaining heart in the music. Like I didn't want to be like ironic or anything like that. I just wanted to uh, be funny and like I guess the mood I'm trying to give off with that one, I was trying to make something very fun to listen to. Um, so it was definitely in service of like the way I was writing songs at that point was very economical and concerned about listener attention span and like have they heard this chorus too many times and like hence like a lot of the songs being like under 2 minutes or something like that. And I think that tape is really great for that and that workflow because it's just like it legitimizes those bite-sized songs. So I was also trying to move really fast, like move on from stuff that I didn't think sounded perfect, or like this vocal could use more compression, but I've already bounced it. So, and I'm too lazy to go and I go bounce it again, and I just want to move on to the next song. I think that uh, was a big part of the kind of rushed, janky vibe of it, where like I spent a lot of time on arrangement and stuff like that, but then in execution, it's done very hastily and like, or it's done very like um, slipshod, I'd say. And I think that's part of the funny kind of thing about it, where it's like it's not too serious.
Yeah, yeah. In that way, I kind of see why you were so influenced by the Elephant Six, because in my opinion, that really does like jive with the way they oriented their music. You know what I mean? Like when I
Yeah,
think of the bands in that scene. So I I get where you're coming from if like that's your inspiration.
yeah. It was definitely like their whole ethos was like giant for me and completely changed my world.
So, thanks for that. I wanted to follow up that question with another one about Welcome to the Shower. Like, namely, why do you pick that name? Is it like just an extension of the like we're trying to be funny here, we're trying to not take it so seriously aspect?
Yeah, I that that's like one of the only times like something like I was sleeping on my friend's floor and I had like a dream that the album had come out and it was called Welcome to the Shower and it was doing really well. Um and that was after we had taken the album cover photo. We were just taking a bunch of photos in weird places. Uh so it like all connected. It was like the night we took the photo I had that dream and so I was like I guess like I had no other ideas. So I thought I'd do that. And again, it definitely is part of the whole not taking it too seriously and being funny. Or at least I found it funny. But like I with and then like I made an interlude track, like the title track, I made that afterwards just to make it kind of feel like it makes any sense in the album at all. And yeah, that's another one that's like meant to be very funny.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Would have kind of thought that you like kind of worked backwards there. I really appreciate the insight there. Uh, anyway, I kind of wanted to ask another question about the creative process, being like, what exactly did this album look like when you in like the first like conceptual stages compared to where it is now with the released project? Like, do you think there were some great like changes you had to make in order to make this something that was actually released, or does it like align very well with what you intended it to be?
Well, I never am able to like I'm not the type of person that's able to conceptualize like an entire release before it happens. Like I just kind of make songs, and then like whatever headspace I'm in for that like year that I'm writing those songs, hopefully we'll have some sort of cohesion. Uh but I definitely like had older songs that I re-recorded in order to have them fit the vibe of the rest of the album more. Like Museum Broadway had already been finished, but I just didn't like how it sounded on my computer, and so I redid it more tapey, I think. And I guess yeah, that I'm never, as of yet, I haven't been able to like visualize a release right until the last moment.
So you'd say it's like it's something that's like a process in and of itself, the creative process. Like it becomes a project as it goes on, like it develops like
Yeah,
that. Interesting,
it like
interesting.
rolls into like snowballs eventually into something that feels like a unit instead of just a hodgepodge of singles.
Yeah, because when I was listening to this release, I never would have guessed how like ramshackle you imagine it to be, because it felt very cohesive with the production all being like very in line with each other, songs segueing into each other pretty well. Like to me, it was a more cohesive project. So I find it really interesting that you're offering a different perspective, I guess.
Yeah, definitely some of that's after the fact, like a lot of like mastering everything through the same tape machine. That's like a really weird tape machine that has a very specific like EQ curve. Uh it just glues everything together, and that helps where it's like um things don't sound drastically different from each other in a way that's like jarring. Um and also like cutting things off at the right time and cutting songs off, and like I don't know. It did all happen very last minute where it's like I need this to feel like I need momentum, and I need uh to retain momentum, and it's just like little choices. Yeah.
All right, yeah. Uh, I really appreciate the way you've shed some light onto the creative process. So we're going to take a break to play another track from Tanner York. If you're just tuning in, Tanner York is who we are interviewing at this moment, and we are going to be playing another track from his newest album, being All Over Again. After that, we'll return with some more questions.
I got the
Anyway, now that that track's over, I wanted to have a few questions about some of the opportunities I've seen that you've been able to like finagle, such as opening for Wednesday. I'd love to know how that experience was working with them in that aspect and anything else you'd like to divulge about it.
Yeah, they of course uh pretty much the Asheville band that like so many people were like moving to Asheville because of Wednesday and MJ Linderman. And uh I was lucky enough to meet Carly after like a secret show in Asheville, and we just became really good friends. And I would send her music, and then like uh, stuff like that. And then eventually she asked me to open one of the Cat's Cradle shows because they were adding another show, and I was super super psyched about that. And that was like one of the best nights of my life. It was like so a lot of the reason is like my whole family, like my whole mom's side of the family was there, like on the side dancing, and that was really, really cute. Um, but everyone was just extremely supportive. My band seemed really, really happy, and it felt like an extremely beautiful moment. And then, of course, like uh, I've seen Wednesday so many times now, and like it never gets old. They're just so insanely good live. It's kind of insane, but yeah, they're the nicest people in the entire world, and they yeah, it was an incredible, incredible experience.
Yeah, I could imagine. I've seen two Wednesday shows myself, and they're some of the best concerts I've been to. So to like be
Yeah,
part of one, that's that's just kind of amazing to me. Just
Y-
sharing my own thoughts and
yeah, it was very surreal, definitely.
yeah. In a similar vein, I wanted to talk about someone you've got opening for you at your New York tour stop for the concert tour, being Ivy Wolk. I wanted to ask, how'd you finagle that, given that, you know, she's a bit of a hard person to get a hold of from what I've heard, given that she's in a lot of pretty big projects. How do you manage to get her to open for your show?
She's another really good friend of mine. I was introduced to her uh from a friend, uh, and we I think she's like one of the funniest people I've ever met in my entire life, and extremely wise beyond her years. Uh, and she's an incredible person, and we uh, I I started I was doing a ton of comedy before I really dove fully into music. I was doing a lot of stand up, so she was a big influence on me because she's such an incredible stand up. Um, and that's like I guess like doing comedy, you get to know people like that are doing comedy. So it's like um, that's how I know her is through comedians, various comedians. But yeah, yeah. Um, so I asked her to open one of my shows with another one of my favorite comedians, E. Modica, who is also one of my favorite stand-ups uh, right now. And yeah, she seemed very. I'm hoping it works out because she's you know, there's no telling how busy she is at any moment. So no, uh, but I bet it'll happen. You know, I hope it'll happen. I think it'd be funny. I think it'll be funny, like to have two comedians go and then a really loud band. I think just that in itself is like a something fun.
Yeah, I guess that aligns with your ethos.
Yeah, I feel like it works.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see.
Anyway, I meant to ask this earlier, but I forgot. That's on me. But I wanted to ask, you've got a multi-state tour coming up. Could you let us know how you managed to set that up, Tanner? I can't imagine that's something you can organize in just a day or two. So yeah, how'd that happen?
Definitely not. It was pretty excruciating. Um, it was a lot of work. Uh, I did it with one of my closest friends, Emily Mooseburger, and she known her since like freshman year of college, like day one, and we just stuck it out, DM'd everyone, emailed everyone. Like it's so many moving parts, and it's like so opposite what I enjoy about like doing stuff like this. But like you have to do that stuff. You have to do the not fun stuff if you want to do a DIY tour. And I think we pulled it off. We just got our Pittsburgh date locked in, which was our last like, problem, and we just have to, figure out our band situation. It's a lot, but and it was extremely hard. But uh, I'd say like probably relatively, we had a very good experience with people. Like band seemed uh, very happy to play, and everyone was being very hospitable, and uh, there was no like huge discouraging moments, just like stressful moments.
So, anyway, while I have you, I wanted to ask a few more frivolous questions, like as to better paint a picture of you, not just an artist, but, as a person. So, what have you been getting up to outside of music with your free time, if you've got any? Anything interesting?
I watch a lot of movies, like on my TV in my room. It's like really the only other thing I do. I watch a lot of movies. I watch a lot of really bad movies and like horror movies. It's kind of just uh very comforting to me. And then other than that, I don't do a ton outside of music. I really should. I've been getting back into reading books. I wasn't for a while, and I just realized it was probably bad for my brain to not be reading. So I'm reading like uh this really good. I think it's like a classic rock novel. It's called Our Band Could Be Your Life, and it's like about the indie scene from the 80s to the 90s, and it is really really thorough and funny, and I've been really enjoying that.
All right, that's really cool. That's really cool. So, I guess even things outside of your career as an artist end up being influenced by that, like your pastimes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like I also read like fiction and stuff like that, but like I do like a rock book.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Anyway, this will be the last question of the interview, so I'll try to let you have the floor. Is there anyone or anything you want to shout out on the air while you have the time, like collaborators, inspirations, basically anything you think that's relevant right now? Anything in mind?
Um, well, I've been so obsessed with this guy Graham Hunt. I don't know if you know about Graham Hunt. This guy like is making my favorite music that's coming out right now. And we played with him at Static Age Records, which is um like kind of the DIY venue in Asheville currently. And it blew me away, and his music is so crazy good. So everyone should go listen to Graham Hunt. Um Static Age, go to Static Age shows if you're in Asheville. Um
Heyday Music is the guitar store that I work at in Asheville, and it's the most beautiful place on earth. And yeah, I recommend it to anyone.
All right, that's really cool, Tanner. I really appreciated having you on your program and letting you just tell us about yourself and your art. Uh, I wish you the best regarding your upcoming tour for Welcome to the Shower. I really do hope it goes swimmingly, and I personally will try to make that Durham spot if I can.
That'll be fun.
This has been the Martyroshka, and if you've got a desire for more interviews, check out wknc.org/podcast and give a listen to Off the Record's prior interviews. Thank you to everyone who tuned in, and stay tuned for more interviews in the future. Goodbye.